Are you ready to speak your truth and live in alignment with your highest potential? Welcome to Fifth Dimensional Leadership, a podcast for leaders, thinkers, and future makers dedicated to creating the conscious workplace of tomorrow. I'm your host, Ginny Clark. Join me and my guests as we move beyond action and doing to the essential truths, knowing and being. Whether you're an accomplished executive like me or a leader in training, we invite you to listen, learn, and grow with us. Welcome to Fifth Dimensional Leadership. So glad to have you. You see, I got my mic over here, trying to keep the sound quality high. And Jackson is here with me again. Welcome, Jackson Best.
So good to be here, Jenny. I am really always a pleasure, and I'm loving being on video with you. I think we've really found our new métier.
I love it. And you always use such beautiful words.
Well, thank you. I mean, this does require a bit more preparation for both of us, as we discussed. There's hair, there's makeup, there's a lot more that factors in.
It's true.
But it's always a pleasure.
Thank you. You know, we got to show up. We got to come correct. So,
right.
Yeah. Well, thanks for getting pretty for us. I appreciate that.
You bet.
Yeah. So today is going to be part 2 of our series on navigating this new future of work. And I'm going to ask Jackson to just give us a quick recap of part 1 and the items that we covered there. And then we'll dig into, here we come with the last 2, maybe 3. We might add a third one. What do you think, Jackson?
I think we could throw in a bonus just for your listeners, just for you and your listeners.
I love it.
Just for you and your listeners. Thanks again for having me back. It's such a vital, critical time for leaders. And really enjoyed our robust discussion last time, where we kicked off exploring the top 5 leadership trends to move us through and beyond COVID, ensure we're all surviving and thriving in the workplace. Your listeners will recall last time we focused on 3 critical leadership essentials. The first one was leading with mental health and consciousness. So being thoughtful about mental health and wellness for teams, for businesses, and for leaders, ensuring that they're putting their mask on first, so to speak, modeling the right appropriate behaviors, and taking care of themselves during this difficult and challenging time.
Yeah, they're not exempt, right?
Absolutely. I know, Ginny, one of our favorite sayings is the fish rots from the head, right? And I always say, if mom ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. So
that's right.
Really critical for leaders to be healthy, whole, and grounded in a firm foundation focused on mental health and well-being.
Yep.
Our second attribute we discussed last time was decision-making and being decisive. So really ensuring that wherever you can remove instability or uncertainty from your business, that you're doing so, that you're being clear and consistent with your teams and employees during this time. As we both know, it's a volatile landscape, and so anywhere that a leader can remove volatility, it's going to redound to the benefit of both the employees and ultimately the business.
Yeah, for sure.
And then our third was communicating with care. This is always an essential leadership must-have, but I think more so now than ever, really essential for leaders to be crisp, clear, consistent in how and what they communicate, and thoughtful in communicating and tailoring their message to the different audiences and stakeholders that comprise and constitute the business. And that means everybody from your most critical junior assets, who also happen to constitute in most businesses the largest population in the business, right. Being thoughtful about what you share and how you share it. I think we highlighted, for instance, as a leader, you might not in this climate environment want to highlight that you're taking a conference call from your, third house in Tahoe when you're with your team. So again, just being really thoughtful in how you communicate and knowing your audience is critical now, so more than ever. And with that in mind, I'll open us up to discussing the trends and topics for today. As you said, we have two more that we work together to highlight as critical, and then we might also have a little bonus at the end. I know this fourth leadership trend or must-have for the new age is one that resonates deeply with you, Ginny.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to turn the floor over to you to talk about acting with integrity.
Yeah, it's interesting, Jackson. I think I shared with you that, and the rest of the listeners, actually, that I moved recently from California back to Chicago.
Yes.
And I had a friend helping me unpack my office, and he was putting stuff away. And I came in the next morning when he was gone, and I found this sort of document, this plaque, this special recognition piece that was honoring my father. And someone had written effectively a poem, and I won't read the whole thing to you, but the title of it was Jack Clark, a Man of Integrity. And part of what it said is his willingness, I will read this part, his willingness encouraged people to believe no journey is too far. That was, to me, sort of the last line. It was so poignant. And two things came to mind. One, obviously, I was very, very proud because my dad was not sort of an openly spiritual person, but I knew that at his core that he was deeply human and feeling and empathetic and a great listener. And he had a tremendous amount of integrity. And so to have other people recognize that, and this had been, 4 or 5 years after his passing, was just so gratifying and so remarkable. That was the first thing. So it was just personal. The second thing was I always regarded my dad as a leader. And I thought, are our leaders today acting with integrity? And what does integrity really mean? Because I think, a lot of people in our organizations will grab the latest buzzword, right? That maybe these consulting firms have coined or that somebody coined, some author, and say, we're that, we have a great culture. We do this, we do that. And it's like, but really? And so, me, ever the linguist, and I know you can appreciate this. I actually went and looked up the etymology of the word integrity. And the etymology for people is the history of it, right? And so the root of integrity is the word integer. And from your early arithmetic education, you remember integer. It's a whole number, remember?
That's right. Not a fraction.
I hadn't heard that in forever. It's not a fraction. It's a whole. And so that, to me, that got me really thinking about, some of the things that it means to be whole as an individual. It's not just this morality, but it's being this holistic person and being undivided in thought, word, and deed. And through your words and your actions and your leadership, you're seeking to create unity and not divisiveness. God knows we need that on so many layers of our leadership right now in civilization at large, right? Absolutely. And so I just thought that was a beautiful word for us to begin to unpack and explore. Any reaction to that, Jackson?
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing. I know we've talked about Jack B. Clark before and what a remarkable leader he was. And also, I invite your listeners to revisit those. I think that was probably our first episode, maybe, where we talked about Jack. Yeah. And someone who really was a model of integrity and led in a sphere where some might not always see leadership or, might not be the first place people think of leadership blossoming.
That's right.
So thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Precisely what you said. I mean, I think we've talked about themes around being undivided, being consistent, right? And it goes to just to what you're saying about integrity, that sense of being undivided in thought, word, and deed. I know we've also talked a lot about leaders acting out of fear, and how that fear can create can cloud a leader's vision or compel them to make decisions that might be acting outside of what they know.
That's right.
Is right.
Yeah.
Or again, sort of dividing, creating a conflict with their own moral compass and their sense of integrity. Do you want to talk a little bit about that fear factor, Jenny?
Well, yeah, because I think it can take a lot of forms. And I guess I've experienced it in several different ways. And one is the fear is an anxiety about one's performance as a leader, right? Where someone isn't necessarily feeling secure. They might fear that they don't have all the answers. They might fear that their team doesn't respect them. I mean, people can tell themselves stories and work themselves into a tizzy.
Yeah.
Once again, leaders are human too. And so these behaviors that the rest of us have, leaders also suffer from, right?
Yeah. It's just at scale, right?
It's at scale and very often exacerbated because of the pressure that they might put on themselves or perceive coming down from higher up in the organization.
Yeah.
So that's one that, again, people need to begin to deal with and acknowledge in themselves. It's like, really, what am I afraid of? What's that phrase you hear so often? What's keeping me up at night? Well, is that fear or is that a stimulation? Because you know what I mean? Because sometimes that keeping you up at night is a gnawing insight that maybe you're on the verge of receiving if you're just still and quiet. Or it could be this angst of not feeling good and secure. But another type of fear that I've experienced, and I say I've experienced as from another leader, is a fear or intimidation of me, right, as a subordinate.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be quite insidiously destructive because if they're fearing, and it goes back, it's linked to this other type of fear, right, from the person. It's linked to their insecurity about their capabilities.
Yeah.
And so to me, I just had to call that out because I'm guessing that you've seen it too. A lot of us probably have. And very often it goes unmentioned because you're not going to confront your boss necessarily. It's probably not a good idea. To the extent you can support them and try to mitigate and relieve some of that fear on letting them know that you want to, make this is for the good of all. So anyway, those are a couple types of examples of fear that I see in the workplace among leaders and their teams and all of us, right? When I say leaders, I'm really not talking about just the top of the house, but everyone.
Well, and I just want to interject. I think some of that behavior that you're alluding to in a second, you didn't say it explicitly, but I'm going to.
Okay.
Some of that is tied to the leader's identity, right? Vis-a-vis your identity, my identity.
That's right.
For those who have historically been in the hegemony, who perhaps perceive their sphere of influence, their control, their universe shrinking, who perceive that the playing field is becoming more and more level, and that they're now being held to the same scrutiny and standards as the rest of us. They're afraid of losing what was an illusion, as you and I have talked about before, of power and privilege.
No question. No question. And it's just fear erodes integrity.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Bottom line, it erodes integrity and it makes leaders make bad decisions. Yeah. Or at least let's say it differently. Some that are misaligned with the values that might have been stated for themselves and the organization, and even their intentions. Very often, some of this behavior it's unintentional. It's rooted in their essence, right? And that's where that consciousness piece comes in, where that self-awareness of being able to say, "Whoa, am I looking at this right?" You can't always keep your own counsel.
That's right.
I have you to go to and check. Is this And I've done it. It's like, is this the right way to approach this? Is there another way? There's always another way. What might be a better way? Right. So I think that humility and the vulnerability is all playing into this.
Yeah. And that fear, Jenny, right? We're talking about leaders, but again, in the spirit of the fish rots from the head, that fear can permeate and does permeate a culture, right? And can spread. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? I know you've had guests.
I think it can be quite that kind of fear can take on it morphs into a toxicity, right? Because if you're fearful, then your team members are going to sense it in some way, and that can spawn all these other behaviors of competitiveness. And I'm thinking of, what was that famous book, Catcher in the Rye? I don't know why that comes to mind. Yeah. Was that the one that I'm thinking of?
I'm not sure. J.D. Salinger.
Lord of the Flies. Maybe it was Lord of the Flies.
Yes.
Lord of the Flies.
Yeah, Lord of the Flies.
Right, where there's just this. People are just the turn on themselves, in a worst case scenario. But I've been saying for years that culture is an amalgam of the behaviors of the senior most leaders. That's it. What behaviors are being tolerated? I don't care what you say, but it's been evidenced by a lot of companies that have had their senior leaders behaving badly.
Yeah.
I had a guy named Jay Guilford on as a guest several episodes ago, and he's a workplace consultant and talks a lot about toxicity in the workplace. And he talked about the leaders at Nike, Victoria's Secret, the Ellen DeGeneres show. I think we just saw Andrew Cuomo go down. Yeah. Think about the culture that the people in his office were operating under. So this is real. And again, there are no number of ping pong tables and free food that's going to sort of mask what's actually going on in a culture.
Yeah.
And so that's I wanted to really call that out,
Yeah. Yeah. It was just it permeates, and that toxic leadership has a long tail. And I think, to your point, the Andrew Cuomo example is the most public, visible example of how a workplace can turn toxic when leaders are not acting with integrity.
That's right.
Integrity.
Well, and that communication piece too, of nobody wanted to say anything.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. That they had been the culture had become so toxic.
The fear.
And out of fear of retaliation, retribution, whatever negativity might befall them if they were to say something.
That's right. Well, and that's how that integrity piece, those little compromises stack up day over day, and they spread, right? Every person that didn't speak wasn't acting in alignment with what they know at their core was right.
That's right.
And I say that not necessarily with judgment, but just illustrating, again, this principle of the fish rots from the head. I think here's what I want to emphasize with leaders, and I know you share in this as well to that point. It's never too late to do the right thing.
That's right.
And act with integrity. And that might sound Pollyannish.
No.
And it might seem like we're talking about grand concepts here, but this integrity piece, it's not a light switch. Integrity it is a writ large concept, but for an individual, it's not a monolith. It's a muscle, and you have to flex it. And if you don't flex it, if you don't use it, you lose it. It erodes with time, with small decisions that pile up into big decisions.
It's true.
I think of that Hemingway quote from The Sun Also Rises, where one of the characters says, well, how did you go bankrupt? And the other character says, well, two ways, gradually, then suddenly. And so these decisions are happening all day, every day. We're confronted with these micro decisions that, that sometimes explicitly and sometimes we don't even think about it, force us to lean into our integrity. And it's that decision. It's those little decisions. It's the decision to push your buddy who looks like you forward in the hiring process without interviewing anyone else. It's the decision to not give that honest, difficult feedback to that Black colleague because it's just easier not to. It's that decision to let one more compensation cycle slip by without closing the pay gap for that one woman on your team who, for reasons passing understanding, is not making the same amount of money as her male counterparts. It's letting those things slip by and stack up day over day that create these large scale integrity issues. And is it tough? Hell yes, it's tough.
Of course.
That's what leadership is, Jenny.
Thank you.
And it only gets tougher with time as you let those integrity compromises stack up, as you let that integrity muscle atrophy.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That is so true. It's funny. Interestingly, yesterday I did a virtual speaking engagement, and one of the questions I got was, if a leader recognizes that he's lost trust with his team, how might he regain it? And I thought, wow, that was a really good question. I never got that one before. And what I said is, tell the truth.
Yeah. Tell
the truth. And this is the perfect opportunity that we're in. We're still in a pandemic. And so, and people have been introspective and reflective. And I could see this leader calling his or her direct reports together and saying, or maybe going one-on-one and talking to them and honestly coming forward and saying, I fear that I don't have your trust or that of the team. Mm-hmm. And here's what I want to do, or maybe you can tell me what you think I can do to regain it because it's important to me. Yeah. And I've lost sight of things. And I think starting with that truth can allow a leader to uncover some of the other truths and get their team members speaking their truth back to one of our 5 dimensions, right? It's know yourself, speak your truth. And that means in everything. And that to me is at the core of integrity. If you really seek to have this holistic, integrated, undivided team. That's what a team is supposed to be, right? And that's what an organization is, a composite and a compilation of these teams of people. And I think until we really come back and honor those things, it starts with these micro behaviors at the individual level, whether you're a leader or not, honoring your truth, being able to speak it, finding environments where you can and contributing to those environments as often as possible. And to the extent that you can't, you recognize that pervasive, now we're going to call it a culture because it is that amalgam of behaviors from the senior leaders, is untenable, and you vote with your feet.
Yeah.
Right? We talked about the Great Resignation last time.
That's right.
And I think it's a great movement because it means to me that people have flipped a switch. They're recognizing the power that they have in their career and in their work situation, and they're making more conscious, deliberate choices. I think that is huge and rich. And it's not limited to more junior people, by the way, right? We are seeing senior leaders there might be more quiet and moves with intermediaries, right? With recruiters or whatever. But it's still happening, and they're not doing it just for the money. They're doing it because they want to be part of a unified organization that can optimize their contributions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a great segue to our 5th leadership must-have for now and the future, which is one that I know is near and dear to both of us as talent professionals: maintaining a talent mindset. Yeah. You were just talking a little bit about the Great Resignation and employees right now feeling that greater sense of agency, choice, and I'll add seeking out environments that are fostering agency and choice. That's right. I would love to turn the floor over to you, Jenny, to share more around that criticality of maintaining a talent mindset.
Yeah, well, it seems really basic, but as I reflect on my many years in a variety of organizations, I think it's essential. And part of what that means to me is you see people as human and not commodities.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to divert a little bit because this just keeps coming to mind from a recruiting standpoint. You know, a lot of people, especially at the leadership level, think there's the perfect candidate out there. Perfect. And I'm not going to stop until I find him. And very often it's a him. I'm sounding really negative. I apologize. But it's like, that's kind of silly. Really? How many people in the world? 8 billion, 7 billion? So what makes us think that there is someone who's perfect for this role at this time? There's someone who's going to be 95% right for now. In 6 months, they might not be as right given business conditions. So I just wanted to throw that out there about, it's like we have this broad sweeping concept that says, well, yeah, I can always find somebody else. And then at the same time, we're kind of going, yeah, but there's one person that's going to be right for this singular role in this singular company in this singular city.
Leaders, if you're taking that approach to hiring, it's not setting you up for success. It is not setting your future hire for success. These are, as you've heard me say before, Jenny, in a work context, these are relationships, right? It's just like any other relationship. If I love my husband, he is not perfect, and God knows I'm not perfect. If someone out there has found the perfect, either in their romantic life or in their professional life, Godspeed to you. But
seriously,
to your point, being open, maintaining an open talent mindset, and understanding that there isn't a perfect candidate. Yeah. And if you're expecting someone, if you have that expectation of someone, it's destined for failure, in my view.
It really is. Yeah, it really is. Because typically what goes along with that is an image, some characteristics. And I won't go down that hole.
It also, to me, when I hear those types of themes from leaders or hiring managers, it's an indicator to me, and I mean this with kindness, with a little bit of velvet hammer kindness. It's an indicator to me that they don't want to invest the time to nurture this talent, grow this talent, ensure this talent will be successful. To your point, they're commoditizing talent. They want a plug and play solution that they can make the hire, done and dusted, and go on and do whatever they view as a higher priority.
Yeah.
And again, that's a recipe for disaster.
It so is, because they're not leading. I might have said this before, but done a probably not so great job of quoting, his name just went out of my head. GE Welch, Jack Welch.
Jack Welch, yep.
And he said something like, if you're not spending half your time on people issues, then you're not a real leader.
Yeah.
That's what's going to be required more and more. And so for those of you that don't like people who are in leadership roles, maybe you want to become an IC.
Yeah.
Right? Or a consultant somewhere, because now it's coming down to how you treat people.
Yeah.
One of the things, go ahead, Jackson.
I was just going to say, for me, and I know for you as well, that's what keeps it all rich for me, is the human factors element.
Totally.
The people piece. And I know, I've heard you say many times, for any organization, yours, that of your clients, people matter. Talent matters. Talent matters.
Yeah. We're human. We need to be treated as such. I wanted to mention a couple other things as it relates to talent, because I fear that we've forgotten about some subsets of people. And one of them is, in the gig economy, in many countries, they're providing completely unacceptable pay scales and creating the social underclass and worsening the economic divide. We certainly see it in our country. I mean, according to Forbes, by the end of 2020, 1 in 4 women in the U.S. considered downshifting their careers or leaving the workforce due to COVID. And so what are these women going to do? If they have to work, it's going to be a gig. and they're going to make a fraction of the compensation with no benefits.
Yeah.
So that's just one segment of that gig economy, right? I'm linking a couple different themes here by talking about women and how many are leaving. There's another one that I read recently about that frankly had sort of escaped my notice, and that's the ghost economy. And this one I think is mostly folks who are offshore if you're sitting in the United States, that we never see. And they generally don't have any sense of community. They're anonymous. Right. Yeah. They might be that person that when you call for customer service or something that you hear them, but they're a disembodied voice that probably has never been to a company event of the company that they're representing. Right. Because they're not even in the same country on the same continent. And there was a book, and I admit that I haven't read it, but it's called Ghost Work, and it's by Mary Gray and Siddharth Suri. And they're interestingly, I'd read enough to know that they're blaming Silicon Valley for creating this global underclass. And I'd suggest there might be some truth to that.
Well, I think it goes, this goes back to many of the leadership traits that we've talked about. Again, talent matters. All talent in your organization matters. And as we've spoken previously about, your ability to engage as a leader and communicate with all cohorts and populations in your business, to be inclusive, empathetic, thoughtful with all audiences and parts of your organization. It's just it's critical now, so more than ever.
I agree. Yeah.
Talk to us a bit, if you would, about optimizing the value of optimizing talent through.
Yeah. Well, I love that word because I think, and this links back to this whole idea of consciousness, where a leader needs to be self-aware enough to tap into somebody else.
Yeah.
And in order to unlock and optimize what they're bringing to the table, and that strong leadership creates value. And I think we in many ways we become over reliant on technology, but technology is only as good as the people who are using it.
That's right.
So I just think talent systems that are coming online, a lot of them trying to rely on machine learning and AI, all these things. I think we have to be careful. I think building sustainable information systems for the future is great, but with a mind toward optimizing the people, because that's where the thinking happens. And not just the thinking, but the creativity and the unlocking of that wonderful mind that only humans have.
Yeah. Those talent systems, to your point, they are not the solution.
No, they're not. No.
Means to the solution. They are a means to enable and optimize your human capital.
That's right.
They're a means to free your people assets, your employees, to do their best, highest work and to realize their greatest value, to optimize their potential such that the business is optimized.
Well,
but such a critical point.
For sure. And but then guess what happens, right? Now, if people are feeling optimized, there's a huge level of satisfaction that creates what? A great culture.
That's right.
But it started with what? The leader tapping in to the individual.
Yep. That's right.
I know I kind of sound like a broken record on some of this stuff, but the other one to me is, and you and I, you're not a recruiter anymore either. We've both been executive recruiters, and a lot of the recruiting we've done, even inside of Google, was bringing people from outside into the organization. But I think part of this whole idea of optimizing talent, I think companies need to be thinking about internal mobility programs and systems that are going to, again, tap into the talent that you already have. And not just because you promise someone a promotion, but because they are exhibiting behaviors that could be deployed at a more senior level or deployed in a completely different function. I think that's amazing. I also just heard about a company called role share, where they're seeking to help companies, because a lot of companies aren't good at doing this other sort of matching of their existing talent capabilities and competencies. And this company, Role Share, it's a startup that I heard about. And they're looking to do that with using software and some algorithms to help these companies do some of that matching internally and even identifying externally to allow these roles to be shared, splitting the money down the middle and facilitating different lifestyles that people often need for very good reasons.
It's so critical right now in this climate, Jenny. I know you always keep your finger on the pulse and you're deeply attuned to the landscape. And as we all know, here in the States, we're in a circumstance where there are more jobs than there are workers.
Isn't that something?
Isn't it something? So if you are not creating those opportunities, to your point, internally, if you, again, are not optimizing your talent, investing in your talent, and creating a path forward for your talent, they will create their own path. And it might well be out of your organization to another organization that will create a path forward.
Exactly.
And so it's just everything all the threads you're pulling on around criticality of talent systems such that they support and enable employees to be optimized, realize their best, highest use, and continue to grow and move forward on their path, as well as building infrastructure systems for talent review with consistent criteria that ensure equity in how your employees are evaluated, both within the company, but also, being evaluated equitably with external talent when
that's right
for jobs. Those things are so critical to maintaining a happy, productive workforce, and ultimately, having a productive culture of retention.
Yeah, I agree. Can we jump to the sort of bonus topic? I just want to be mindful of time and our folks.
You and I could chat all day especially about talent. But we did, when we were talking through these 5 elements, we identified, that they all sort of roll up into one meta theme or one thing that is going to be critical for all leaders moving forward. All of the things we've talked about, a talent mindset, ensuring you have the right talent in place to optimize and sustain your business for the long haul, acting with integrity, communicating with care, decision-making and being decisive, leading with mental health first. All of those things are essential for managing through crisis. And here's the thing, Jenny, the ability to manage through crisis, especially for C-suite leaders, especially for HR practitioners and those in the public service, that's going to become the new normal as we continue to navigate all of the, frankly, existential threats that lie ahead of us, the most prominent of which is climate change. The weather-related events that continue to escalate in number and severity, unfortunately, are not going to go away. And they're going to begin to merge and are beginning to merge with other disruptive forces, including a growing refugee crisis, and the reintroduction of new viral pathogens as the permafrost thaws. That's predicted to create other COVID-like events. I don't say this to scare folks, but just to emphasize how critical these attributes are, and that in total, they are sort of the essential toolkit for leaders managing and navigating crisis. We talked last episode about leaders really getting their house in order and fixing foundational cracks. And that includes crisis management. These crises are coming fast and furious. I know you're seeing them with clients that you're working with. I know as I speak with colleagues across the corporate landscape, they're experiencing similar challenges. And it's essential as leaders that you've anticipated, planned, and pre-wired your business as much as you can to survive and thrive. We've got a lot ahead of us. And so again, anything you can do to close up those cracks in your foundation such that your house is solid and can weather, at this point, the quite literal storms.
Yes.
Is critical.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts on that, Ginny, or anything you'd want to add?
I couldn't really say it better. I mean, I think you and I are pretty good at zooming in and zooming out and integrating, right? Integral, integer, integrity,
There it is.
Creating a whole holistic, undivided picture of what's happening and how we can take ownership of it, take responsibility for it, take ownership of it, and even create change. I'm not one to feel ever as a victim. And so I want us to understand how we can impact some of these forces that are around us. We're not helpless. There's a lot that we can do, and it starts with small steps, starting with ourselves. So
that's right.
Yeah,
that's right. It's a pleasure and a privilege.
Indeed.
Okay, Ginny, I know you're a smooth operator, and you never plug yourself, but I'm shameless. So I just wanted to close, first of all, by thanking you for having me back. It's just been such a joy to spend this time with you. And I know that you are busy and have a lot going on, but I also know that you're currently offering thought leadership, keynotes, and consulting on talent and these very future of work topics that are so mission critical that we've discussed. For leaders and organizations who I know are listeners of yours that might be interested in engaging with you, benefiting from your wisdom and consultation, how would you suggest they get in touch with you and seek you out?
It's real easy. For the consulting work, it's Ginny@GinnyClark.com. My website is JinnyClark.com. If you're on this podcast, I'm guessing that you know how to spell my last name, but people forget the E. And then for speaking engagements, I'm working with a speakers bureau called Leading Authorities. And so if you go on their site and you type my name in, I'll pop up and they could hook you up with an engagement, which I would love. Thank you for that.
Of course. Of course.
Appreciate it.
Always grateful to you and for you. And I look forward to our next time together.
There's more coming. There's always fodder every single day.
There's always work done.
I love it.
I'll turn to you to close us out, Ginny.
Cool. Thank you. Jackson, again, always a pleasure. I'm so grateful for your thought leadership and partnership and collaboration on these topics. We're of like mind, but we're different enough, I think, to bring a unique perspective that isn't often spoken about. So I'll close with that and just expressing gratitude to you and wishing everyone health and wellness, sanity, love, joy. Find it. Go get it.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoy Fifth Dimensional Leadership, subscribe, share, and leave a rating or review on your platform of choice. And don't forget to check us out at JinnyClark.com. That's GINNYCLARKE.com. You can explore this and prior episodes, view tips and tricks, and sign up for special announcements. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. And until then, remember, you're just that good. Special thanks to writer and collaborator Jackson Best, contributors Sadasia McCutcheon and Tianka Shepard, operations manager Kimberly Cupits, and production and editing Podfly Productions.